LCEA
But
bargaining,
see,
and
that's-
then July 23,
We're not a
2018,
fair
begin
share
at
state, so it
1
doesn't matter.
Right.
Hello everyone, welcome back, glad to see everybody again. We left off last time with a few things we were going to talk about coming in to this session. Part of that was in Article 15 where we were still discussing planning period and school schedule. And then also I requested that you guys give me some feedback on compensation. Kathy was nice enough to forward us some language based on her recollection, I believe, from when we had talked about that Article 15 prior. I went back and watched it. There were we had a pretty long conversation that day. So there's some things that, so I do feel like we're pretty close and familiar with it. Just to remind everyone, there were a couple of things that we were trying to figure out. We were talking about a bunch of minutes and what was required and what was not. And we were wanting to make sure that our folks were getting their planning time like they were supposed to. And we boiled down to one of the factors we have, perhaps most people were getting their planning, but maybe there were some instructional folks that perhaps were not getting all of their planning. And then also on some of the intervention days that not all instructional staff were included. There was also some discussion around rosters and what students were impacted on those days and what was required of teachers for those additional times, and it felt like we're looking for some flexibility within the language that reduced the number of waivers that had to be considered, but also gave faculty input in some regard on how we would determine changes in the schedule. So I don't know, did you have copies of the one the information that you sent me?
Mm-hmm. That's why I sent it to her,
Okay.
asking and kind of seeing if we put everything together, because I was afraid that if we didn't have it all together, everybody would be so confused.
Yeah. There was
And I didn't have the other language that was
gotcha.
discussed.
Yeah, because the other language being the where we incorporated the MOU
Yes.
to compensate after a certain number of times the teacher's planning period was interrupted during the week.
Yes.
So if everybody is on their Article 15, there were a couple things that you guys had asked for, and that but also I felt like had been conceded upon through discussion. Part of that was in the first paragraph under planning period. That's Article 15, Section 2. Starts off a little easy in the beginning, and then we'll get down into some a little bit more complicated. But what I tried to do was a lot of math to see where we were sitting on some of the minutes. So we'll talk about that as we progress through. Basically, in the first paragraph there, what Kathy has recommended, we got to the last sentence there. The individual teacher planning period is defined as the period during the workday when teachers can plan for their own classes and students. And you guys wanted to add in, and is teacher directed. And I think the way I understood that was that they're planning for their own classes and that their planning was teacher directed. Now it did, you guys had recommended striking, this may include both individual and group planning time, and you guys wanted to strike that. I wanted to discuss that a little bit. If if group planning is permitted and it's teacher directed, is it, what are you guys trying to avoid with the group planning? Because I know that was a point for you guys.
I mean, teachers want to get together as a group on their own and plan, fine. But we are seeing or have seen where the administrator has to sit with the team and do a template, and forms have to be filled out, and et cetera, et cetera. We don't need that. That's kind of defeats the purpose of planning for your own class. But yeah, I mean, if teachers want to get together on their own, there's nothing stopping them from doing that. But it's the others that they got a little sloppy and regimented.
Administrator, if you have a new directive or initiative that requires the equivalent of a PLC, whatever, don't be taking my planning period for that PLC. You want to bring in some subs, you know, pull me out, stuff like that, we can talk about that. My planning period is my planning period. And this goes all the way back to a discussion about forms, because a lot of principals wanted to do forms. Like, you treat me as a professional, you don't need a form, because we collaborate, we know how to collaborate, we're the same subject. We're doing it without the form. So it doesn't exclude group meetings.
Okay.
It's just that we are in control of our planning here.
And it was also the idea one reason why the grievance was put up is because the principal was telling them that they had, faculty meeting, and then you had collaborative planning. You had to do collaborative planning. Okay, there's your 2 meetings. But then all of a sudden, when you have a PLC, or you have
It's
a PD, or you had it, you had something else.
Right.
And then of course we kept getting all the, well, you had to go to your IEP meetings, and you had to go to your MTSS, and you had to go to, and it seems like a lot of the same teachers were involved with the IEPs and the MTSSs and then they're overwhelmed with things because they're doing things for their students, and then plus they have to do everything else also. So it gets to be very time consuming.
I remember, I believe, during the talking about, they divide and conquer some possibly, and your school, can you describe a little bit? I don't know if you can help us a little bit from how you manage this at your school, but also how, if the district's had any input on that. In prior years, I'm not sure.
I just know that what we do is Thursdays are PLC days. Not every Thursday, but Thursdays we
Define
have
PLC.
a PLC where we come together, we'll do some professional learning. We might look at student data. It could be a variety of things. A lot of times
So that's a PD.
it can be PD, but it's also a time to come together. We'll go over some standards that if it's a test spec area, we'll take a look at test specs, whatever we're looking at, how much it may count. So it can be a variety of things, but as professionals coming together and gaining more information regarding students they are teaching. So it's very directed to their level and their content area. My teachers prefer to get together one other day a week for detailed planning, and they do it a variety of ways. Some in the grade levels that are team taught, ELA will go on their own, math will go on their own. In the younger grade levels where they teach all content areas, they'll divide. Some will do ELA planning, some will do math, some will do science, and then they come back together one afternoon and just share everything. They try to stay clean ahead about 2 weeks. They might, but that is, some don't need that, some prefer to do it that way. And I let it be their choice of whatever they think that they need. If they're 2 weeks planned ahead, they don't need to do, they try to stay ahead enough so that they can get it all done at one time. Where then when they come together, they're able to kind of be planned ahead and then articulate out to each other. And that's how we have done it. But I also, on our Wednesdays, the second and second and fourth Wednesdays of the month are their own plannings. Like, they can do whatever with that time. The only thing I do is on a third Wednesday of the month, we have Choose Your Learning, where teacher leaders will teach other teachers something cool that they're doing in our classroom. And that's how we,
They were requiring 4 meetings a week during planning.
no, I'm not requiring, I require one.
So they don't have to go to the ED room?
That's the PLC that I would be required that they
Okay, that's
attend.
one. And you talked about the collaborative planning.
That's what they choose. They can get together anytime they want to. Some don't use their planning time. Some already are planning ahead. Some just share
And
out.
you talked faculty meeting.
Faculty meetings, I don't have faculty meetings. The second and the fourth Wednesdays of the month or whatever they do. If I have any meetings, it's the third Wednesday of the month. And if I have something on a Wednesday, I don't have a PLC on Thursday.
So regardless, if they choose to meet on their individual planning time, then it's a time that's within their choice.
Correct.
They're making that decision. So do you feel like it's safe to say that because it's currently in contract, the individual teaching planning period is how it calls it. And then it's a period during the workday when teachers plan for their own classes and students. So you're saying they currently direct that now?
Some do it on Tuesdays, some do it on Fridays, some just share emails and things like that, and then just talk at lunch. I mean, it's in a variety of ways.
I just know that we have an awesome reading coach, and he brings us everything that he can, and he can do what it would take a normal meeting to do in probably in 10 minutes. He's
Exactly.
phenomenal, Leslie Thomas. I mean, he's an ace, and you can't imagine, but he knows that we don't want to look at all these things. He just knows. He knows our
No,
team.
you just bring your, I mean,
This
if
is
they
the
know
bottom
that
line.
this is the standard we're working on, they're gonna be working on it for 3 or 4
Exactly.
weeks. He'll bring it, our literacy coach will come in and just say, hey, when are y'all meeting?
Mhm.
And let me come in, let me show you these pieces of text and choose what you want, just to try to help as much as possible.
Just bring me
But
food at lunch.
regardless, in my opinion, I mean, they're individual, they're planning for themselves. A lot of them choose to have figured out that it's a lot better to come together and you do a little bit and I'll do a little bit than having to plan it all. I mean, and that's the whole kind of gist of that. If I have if they plan one time a week, then and I have something on a Wednesday afternoon, then we don't have a PLC on Thursday. Because, I mean, they need their time. But if I don't have anything on a Wednesday, that's the week I might try to get a PLC on a Thursday.
Because I try to think about, okay, where does this, because I guess this language would conserve administrators and teachers in some regard, because if I think about, like, if you guys have a team in your history department and you got somebody that's not wanting or willing to participate in something you guys have laid forward possibly as a group plan or something like that, how is that handled? I don't know if you ever run into those circumstances, because y'all probably harmonious.
I don't want to be difficult, haven't run into it, but you'll have in our department, for example, psychology. There's only one psychology teacher, so she
Yeah.
gets to meet by herself.
So not waste their time.
I think to add, it's, department meetings is one thing. On Wednesday afternoon, the 1:30 to 2:30, is that in our planning time? Okay, so the school asks us to do a department meeting, okay? And they ask us to do a PLC, okay? Are we saying we
If you
decide
need it,
that?
if you need it, you may not need it.
That's
Okay.
true, and we have the option of not doing it.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
I don't have a date on this, but I know we discussed the MOU that was placed in the plan thing. Is that where you are coming up with this language? because what we had discussed on that day was plan period, and it actually says teachers will have the equivalent of 4 individual planning periods per week without school,
So-
required group meetings such as da-da-da-da-da.
Okay.
So I'm,
And that could be my planning period, 6 period, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Right.
Right, I'm there.
Yeah.
I also happen to have it on Wednesday, 6 period. And then after school, that would be the 6th.
that would be the 6th.
Right.
You've got planning period every day
Right.
plus Wednesday.
Wednesday.
But we agreed in the memo of understanding, a
Right.
minimum of 4.
Right.
I got it. Yeah.
So then the MOU was then placed into with verbiage. And I thought that that was what we were going for, and that's why I didn't have this portion
I got you.
to go with, because this came from you guys, so Gail typed it up, and so then it was in here, and that's what I didn't have unless I went ahead and typed this myself again.
No, and that's not necessary, and that's
So
true.
that's why I just sent what I did with the other schedule to Gail. So I'm assuming that this was okay. Is that different
Yes,
than what
no,
you're?
no, it's correct. No, that's,
okay.
it is. What
Okay.
I was looking at and was, I just wanted to make sure that we were covered in that first paragraph and what it was. And I really, it hinged around, if it's teacher directed and everybody's okay with that, which it pretty much says that anyway, individual teacher planning period, I mean, it infers it's there. So does it matter whether we have this may include individual or group planning? Because to me, it says there's a choice for the teacher, but at the same time, if you guys are reading it as a requirement, the fact that may is there, it makes it loose anyway, so.
Yeah,
I guess
well,
we strike that.
On that same meeting, I thought it was taken out, but,
Okay, all right, okay.
I mean, I have it crossed off on that.
A lot of this is rehashed, trying to, because it was such a big topic and so much went on that day. So, we okay with the first paragraph?
I get really skeptical.
What's that?
I get kind of skeptical, no offense to Linda, but some principals, my teams volunteer to have collaborative planning every day, and it's purely volunteer, but they do it every day. I've heard principals go to the school board and say that. So it's not voluntary if they have to do it every day. So I get skeptical on that phrase. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and some schools are required
Yeah.
to do it. You don't have an option. You must do
Right.
it. The principals sit in the whole meeting. It's not the team.
And
They all
that's the issue, because then especially AC teachers, they feel obligated that because, oh, well, gee, if
The principal's in
I'm a
there
first year
taking
teacher, I mean, I gotta be here because the principal's here and I won't get hired if I don't do, I mean, there's that in the background saying, unfortunately, now.
And
take the day off.
Well, I mean, I guess it's just in the culture though that you think. I mean, because, I mean, I personally work better with a group. Especially, I mean, there's a lot to do in planning. And so it's very helpful when you have a team of experts that can come together and share ideas. You know.
Oh,
if
I
was in-
agree, but
if I
I'm
was
just
in a
saying,
classroom, I
if
don't-
some teacher all of a sudden that says, oh my God, I just have to go to my classroom because I'm behind, I've got this put in grades, I've got things to do, but
You know
yet
what, I
they
wouldn't-
feel
I
obligated
probably
to
wouldn't
sit
even
there
think-
because.
I mean, if it was
they know
every
their-
single time.
If they know their contract says, you know,
Yeah.
that it's okay, you can,
Right.
you know, that you can do this if you have something else on that day that you really need to do, go do that. And then meet
And your
next
team-
week
and
if you have
your team will
to.
get back with you at another time.
Yeah.
Because
I
some
probably would never
teachers will
even
have
know
10 MTSS, you know, you've got all of that.
Right.
And others don't have
Yeah.
any. They might have 2 or something,
Right.
2 little things.
Well,
So
this is not
It's
gonna
a
fit
pile
every
of-
single
Yeah.
situation. No, but it will fit the
paperwork,
majority.
nonsense.
Yes, the majority will be.
Somebody good at
You're on
That
collaborative
makes
planning.
sense.
Yes, I was.
So I think we're okay on the adding and is teacher directed and striking the last sentence. On the second paragraph, we had changed when it talked about the faculty or representative chosen by the faculty suggests arrangements. We had replaced that with the leadership team, which will, earlier in contract, we talked about defining what the leadership team is comprised of. And so it said the leadership team will make recommendations, striking all that other, to ensure equitable maximum instructional and planning period for, we took out the school and put every teacher. Makes sense to me. And then when it got to the last sentence of that, it said, however, a principal shall have the right to require a teacher to engage in other activities such as testing programs as necessary under appropriate circumstances. And you guys added, it was added while continuing to provide equitable planning time. I remember that we had talked a lot about equitable and planning time was kind of tough. So what I wanted to recommend is that while continuing to provide required planning time, because we're working to define planning time, and that way, if everybody's getting their required planning time, no matter what type of instructional teacher they are or what subject they teach, then they're going to get what they're supposed to. Does that make sense? When we get into, some of the other different types of days, on the Wacky Wednesdays or intervention days, equitable is what was tough. However, it will be required in there that those people receive, just as much planning time as anybody else, and not, I think the case more under your question was not more than some other people would. If you had a few people, say, from an elective class that were not included.
Well, yeah, there was the electives or the real teachers who didn't get the planning time that the core teachers did. The next paragraph, when we move into, this is when it starts talking about some of the times, and I'll read what there's a couple subtle differences that I saw, and this is where it got a little bit confusing on when we were talking about a 45-minute planning period and or defining it as hours annually. So it says all elementary, it used to be elementary school teachers, but now it's all teachers will be provided no less than a 45-minute planning period on non-early release days for a total of at least 135 hours of planning time annually. This sentence is where I had a little bit of difficulty, because at first I thought we were talking about just going to the hourly annual requirement, and when I ran the hours and minutes and all the planning that comes out, all the examples I had were taking it above the 135 hour mark. It's when you get into secondary on some of those days that it could the 45 minutes that there was it wasn't quite 45 minutes by a few minutes, but all of it was heavy and favorable of the total hours. So what I was going to suggest is that instead of you leave the shall be provide or will be provided no less than a 45-minute planning period on early release days for a total of at least 135 hours of planning time annually. And that way they're getting their total hours, but because there's not that much room in the schedule to, if you're, if say you can't hit the 45, you're somehow they're gonna have to offer more on another day in order to hit those numbers anyway. And I also added some language kind of to help define another thing we talked about in for the next sentence. I put time before school and during student passing are not included in this total.
Because I heard that as something
Right.
you guys said, don't want
Yes.
anybody cheating a few minutes here and there and trying to dump that
Very
in the
good.
bucket.
That part I would say is where, I don't know about the
Thank
old,
you. Thank you very much.
that part is wonderful though.
Yes,
I'm just
that's-
concerned, I guess I'm
Um,
concerned about the,
Yeah, and we'll pass out the one,
Okay.
this small justice.
I guess I'm concerned about the or, meaning that, for example, if, teachers should have a planned period every day. I'm thinking that if some principal says, well, you can't have a planned period today, and that or is in there, so that's okay, because the or is in there.
But,
Because it's, your total hours are still gonna be there.
you know, and then once you get this that's coming around, you'll see, I kind of cover that up and prevent that. Because it talks about any deviation from this requirement that provides less than 45 minutes will require majority result from anonymous vote for all instructional staff. Now, what I did put on there in parentheses is, I need some language expressing and understanding that the 18-19 schedules are in place. I'm more than happy to work. If something's just atrocious, then
Well, I'm just saying, if it's 40 minutes, okay, that's close to 45 minutes. But if a teacher doesn't have any planned period that day because of whatever,
Field day.
field day, testing, something, they need to have something.
yeah.
We realize field days, that kind of stuff, yeah, you have those things, especially elementary.
Right.
But usually you'll have
But we're trying
a
to
10, 15-minute potty break if nothing else.
Exactly.
You will have something in there that says that you can go and, whew, I got my, for those few minutes.
I
I'm
gotta
just,
really call this parent back.
that's the only thing I'm thinking of with the or, is the fact that, a principal can come back up and say, okay, what are we doing because of a situation? And that's the only reason I'm bringing that up.
Do you feel like do you feel like the deviation language there would cover that? See, because I think of like an elementary school right now, we have a few that want to take a Wednesday
The Wednesdays and do
and go no planning, and then give them all of the teacher workday, things like that. So it would still provide that flexibility as long as it was approved by majority vote anonymously there. And like I said, when you get into, you try to cut somebody's plan as a whole for a day, it's going to take some effort to find where to make up those minutes. It's so that's where it would become kind of tough for them to get away with
I
that.
know if we have the money in our budget, sometimes we will get a half day, a sub for a half day,
Well, there was nothing put in for that.
and we got, we get a lot done. So,
I was trying to, without it getting, too messy and sloppy, cover all levels, and that's why you see I struck each teacher at the middle high school will be provided planning period during the pupil day at least equal greater length, because they're going to be hitting those hours. And like I looked at some examples, East Ridge's schedule. There's whenever she does her remediation days, it's a 40-minute period, but she's 45 minutes on the other 2 days, and then on Wednesdays she was 36 minutes. But when it all came out, and she was if she was giving plenty of time on the early release, that's me saying that's what if I equaled it to the period. I was hoping Julie would be here because I know she gives way more than 36 minutes on an early release day. Chances are they're probably giving an hour a lot of times, and if not, it's plenty of minutes. So she's hitting all her minutes. The way I calculated it out, she was coming in around close to 139 hours.
And it probably would be if she,
Yeah.
unless she had like a faculty.
When you
On
put
that
in,
Wednesday.
yeah. And there's probably
Give or
some
take,
of
but
those.
yes.
And then you look at like Tavares, she's Monday through Friday, and they're having a 30-minute flex community intervention, but she's 47 minutes on Monday through.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
it could be done.
So, and on Wednesday, she's 43 minutes. So they're, you know, through shortening passing periods, through tweaking it, it's always, any of the math that I'm doing is coming out in favor of the teachers, but I feel like, or not necessarily in favor of the teachers, in favor of the above 135 hours. So
That's why we want to define it, yes.
so I feel like that or, but then putting in the requirement, if there's a variation from it, that we're covering those bases.
Yeah, wait, does this one have the time before school? Are not included in this? That's not on this one, is it?
The one that just went out is the one that
Yeah.
LCEA proposed to us.
Okay.
Yeah,
For
when
the
you get
mainly
to,
section-
Because the addition of the time is gonna be a good thing. That's really good.
And it was mainly because it was section 3, because he
Okay.
wanted the wording for the schedules. Whenever it got to school schedule, we had gotten into a whole bunch of talk about what statute was and teaching the maximum hours. I guess trying to keep it clean, the reason whenever I went back and tried to create some school schedule language to compare maybe against what you guys have brought back or what Kathy had just recollected, if it's required by statute, I mean, we're going to have to cover those hours. So I don't know if the regurgitating what the statute requirement in there is necessary. And plus, I know that this is just me hearing from things of the past. If we do start differentiating, secondary is an interesting word in this district. And I'll probably
Yes, it is.
prefer to
You found that
identify maybe middle school and high school, just so we don't regurgitate any unrelated issues. So I wanted you guys to look, if you don't mind, at the school schedule language that I put down there, and we can absolutely talk about it. But it kind of takes into consideration the different ways of class scheduling and things like that.
What's that you're looking at? I'm sorry.
This is
Section 3.
section 3.
Um,
Is-
Your section.
Yeah, the one
Yeah.
in this, yeah, the new
Is
one.
language.
That it basically is absent of talking about that hours that's required by
Hours
statute, and then
Which is,
Well, that's actually,
So non-traditional, what are you meaning by that?
well, that language existed before I came along, so I'm assuming whatever status quo has been, and I know you guys are on block schedules and things at a different time in life. I guess anything that deviates from the norm, and whatever the norm would be, I feel like it gives the opportunity to have some variation there. And then when you get into the other part, we want to make sure that we're only working with kids that are on the student roster.
I like that.
I wanted to say all instructional staff be incorporated in the school's plan for intervention and acceleration. And I think I was trying to come up with a way there, because, you know, it might not be bang for the buck for everybody to have your physical ed teacher doing intervention and remediation, especially if they probably got some strong math background or something. But every teacher is involved in that process, so they're not watching football film instead of, you know, not that, we can always pick on the football team, right?
Well, they're not having an extra break, which is.
Yeah,
what
an
has
extra
happened.
break. So I feel like we kind of talked about that a little bit with the planning, that people are getting their required planning, but also, when we get down into the school schedule, that everybody's included. I feel like there needs to be some type of way to define that a little bit better. Because they might not be working with kids that are on their roster. And that's, but if they're incorporated in the school plan, do you guys feel like that covers that?
I'm just thinking about, I'm thinking elementary right now, and like pause group, you've got to plan for that. You can't just have them show up. So there is additional planning for all of that. And you're not responsible for those children other than the fact that you want them to do well for your school. But they're not on your evaluation or anything like that. But you still have to.
Someone has to plan.
Well,
Whether
but I think they're planning for how time's going to be spent as opposed to documented official lesson planning that has to be submitted is kind of what I'm thinking in my mind.
Okay.
That's,
Well, they don't have to.
I'm just saying, whatever the planning that for normal daily lessons, and that,
So I see what you mean though now
Yeah.
by saying that. All I'm saying is you have to plan for it. You can't just,
oh yeah.
here come the kids, okay, now what are we gonna do? Oh, let's see.
Well, and then and that's where obviously at the elementary level I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I'm not real sure. I haven't dug as deep because we had the issues with the secondary, the middle and high, and so I guess I'm leaning on the expert a little bit here.
You're in the hot seat
Okay,
today.
you should have worn
She's
your
gonna think
crown
about that
today.
for about 30-45 seconds while she I call her.
I know our reading coach and literacy CRT were very instrumental in developing what that scope is, that remediation intervention plan.
Yes, and most of the time, our literacy coaches, with her data, will identify the groups. And then normally, I know a lot of the elementary schools use SIPs, which is a scripted program. And so a lot of times it will be something scripted like that. So it's pretty much, you're on this lesson, and then so it does assist with not having as much to have to plan for in that. The enrichment class, the acceleration pieces, I know at my school they usually do some kind of a literature book or something that you're just reading this book and then you write in response to text, something along those. They're shaking their head, something along those lines. But that's one of the things that a resource that our literacy coaches, because we realize we don't want it to be another thing on teachers.
So we basically on that intervention and acceleration times in the school schedule only include students from a teacher's assigned roster at the middle or high school level, and then does that still provide the flexibility and what you guys need at the elementary level? Because then it talks about all instructional staff to be included in the school's plan. Because I think about it, a kid I know was at Tavares Elementary, and for her, she was pulled to do some things, and I know she wasn't on that student's roster. However, I know it was extremely meaningful, and I'm sure teachers didn't have an issue with it. So I don't want to restrict elementary because that's so much different on how they.
And sometimes you have to shuffle your program because you realize through testing that they're missing the whole phonics background. And there we go, we've got to go way back.
So you think maybe you could come up with some type of sentence maybe that just speaks to elementary, or you guys can help me out with that, or do you feel like we're covered by just defining that roster for those two?
What are you concerned about?
Do we have any intervention time at the middle school level?
Oh, they're fine.
Yes, they are.
We've heard all kinds of little things that some work, some don't. Some trying to add an extra period.
Yeah, one middle school is trying to do 6 periods,
Seven periods.
7 periods, teach 6, just like high school.
So are they trying to emulate what the high school is doing by pulling their own students back?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, I can tell you, it's, I mean, just to be totally honest with you, the district wants intervention time for all schools somehow in there. So I feel like they feel like it benefits all parties involved. So they're not trying to.
Are we keeping data to see if it's successful?
What's that?
Are we keeping objective data to see if it truly is successful? Or are we still using anecdotal data?
Or is it only the data just from the students that are not passing something and now all of a sudden they're passing because they've had intervention?
Well, I think you look at, I'll probably have to point to various high school. You know, they had some pretty in-depth changes in how they were providing intervention for students this year, and they showed a lot of gains. So that's probably an example there. I mean, I'm sure they're using student data without a doubt. I mean, they got to be monitoring from the teacher level to the administrative, AP, principal, hopefully all the way up. You know, exploring if it's having a positive impact. I can tell you, we're not trying to throw things against the wall just to see if it sticks. That's for sure. I mean, it's we want to make sure that we're using every minute wisely that we have. Youngins in the doors. So.
Not that this is scientific data, but I would say the ESE department is most concerned about what happens in the middle school and lack of interventions that are needed to look at ESE placements. So.
Do you mind elaborating on that a little bit, as far as just an intervention for, say, an ESC kid in particular, they're not getting?
They have to have that response to intervention packet done before we can look at them being evaluated. And in a lot of cases, because reading after 6th grade is incorporated into subject matter, I don't staff at a middle school, but I have heard plenty of my peers talking about how frustrating it is that there is not a place in their middle school schedule for them to collect the data that's needed for them to proceed on to a response to intervention process. More so, they have started generating that in high schools because of graduation rates.
Yeah.
So they've actually, where the elementary was excelling, and they still are, but now the second highest level of placements is actually at the high school.
That plays into what you're asking, Stuart, and I don't have a good answer because that's one of the key metrics, the graduation rate, because it's so connected to what, but I don't know how to set up a piece of action research and have a control. You know what I'm saying? It would have to be another school that we don't, but even in drug trials, when the medicine is working, they cancel it and they start doing it. So we're at a good time. We're about to begin another school year to address that. I don't want to take us off on a tangent. I just don't know how to do it. I mean, if we want, I'm a big proponent of the power hours, if we want to do that, I'm willing to work toward it. I just don't know how yet. We'll talk it offline.
And Stuart, I mean, you know, elementary uses iReady as a progress monitoring tool. Some use Star Reading in the upper grades because our intervention time is for ELA. What becomes difficult to figure out was it the intervention time? Most of them are extended learning after school tutoring. You know, you do so many different things. What was
And see, that
one
goes back to
thing
the stick
that
and
makes
throwing everything at the
you
wall.
know, what makes it, you know, that successful. But I think that if you're a school that uses like the SIPS data, you can certainly monitor that, see how many kids test out about this area. So yes, there is some data. It just depends on what resources you're using during those blocks of time to make sure. So yes, there would be some data, especially like from SIPS, and then you can always look at your iReady.
And I think that becomes an issue because schools individually have their own
Different interventions.
Yes,
Mhm.
and assessment piece. So it's not like you can ever look at something in the entire district and say, this is successful
Well, sure.
because.
Well, because like SIPS, for example, some schools may use it, but it's a very expensive program, and so not all schools have
Right,
SIPS.
And I think
Sure.
that we are looking at, I know that just from a curriculum standpoint, I think they have been looking at some materials so that we can get a more defined intervention resource, because it is recognized that we're kind of all over the place, depending on what kind of, you know, materials you do have. So I think mostly, and I would just say for elementary, probably looking more into third, fourth, and fifth, especially fourth and fifth when you're getting into fluency and comprehension. You know, SIPS is phonics, so I think they're looking more into the comprehension pieces for a set intervention.
And then I'm gonna change the subject here. In Chad, I see that in your school schedule, it's strictly the leadership team who gets to determine change in school hours rather than a vote by staff. Am I reading that correctly?
Saying,
Where is that, Stuart?
Section 3, first paragraph.
First sentence?
that is correct. I think you've got things that I think it might sometimes get almost to a district level when you're talking about starting and ending time. I mean, if you've got things that are happening outside as far as transportation or any other issues there, to be honest with you, we can as a district go and make sure our school's okay with it. And I don't think that's control we can relinquish.
But we do have schools that change their start and end time for staff, not necessarily for students, but for staff, they adjust the hours.
So
You're talking like the middle schools that
Yeah.
come in early on Wednesday?
Right.
okay.
We're not adjusting student hours,
Mhm.
we're talking adjusting staff hours.
So what? Tell me what? Because yeah, the answer is yes. I've left it as the existing language that's in there now. So help me understand a little bit.
Well, generally, if you're adjusting staff hours, and staff may be going to the school because of they have to go pick up their child from the school, whatever. So if you leave it just strictly leadership team to adjust staff hours without involving the staff in an anonymous vote, I don't know, it just seems like we're cutting down input.
No, actually, you're increasing because it's right now you have none, and this is permissible following consideration of input from the leadership team. Because the way it's currently stated is that It's just straight variations in the starting and ending time of the teacher's 7.5 hour workday are permissible. That's what it currently states.
Nope. That's the principal's chosen team at each school. Which we discussed before.
What is that?
She wanted the leadership team.
I mean,
Just clarification.
I think we defined we defined earlier in the process who was going to be, how that team was going to be made up. With,
Union rep or.
LCEA representation or designee.
I think it is what it says.
Yeah, no, I understand that, I just wanted that clarification.
Yeah, I think it says.
Yeah.
Union rep or designee. It's 10, yeah. But there are only one or two people that would be involved, most of the people would be. Administrative instructional personnel, both load-bearing and non-load-bearing, non-instructional staff members, and LCA representative or designate.
So theoretically, only one person would be load bearing.
Yeah, just a little note, because I noticed it's done two different ways. Is leadership team caps in both of them, or just leadership?
We have to go back and look how we had it in other spots.
But, yeah, because the one up top in the second paragraph is capital L leadership, capital T team, as opposed to the one down in the section.
I typed, yeah.
Oh, here comes the forms committee now.
Yeah.
Hey, it's her goal to make it uniform once I get through it.
Okay, I'm pointing out Mr. Farnsworth's error.
Hey, that's okay. Make sure everybody's paying attention.
And I have a question, I guess, about that same paragraph, because the first sentence is talking about the starting and ending time of a workday, but then the second sentence is actually talking about the length of class periods. So that's actually
Two topics.
two topics.
So you space those out, I guess.
So, and I think this may be where Stuart is going
Okay.
with the fact of the leadership team might be fine with doing something like, for example, the middle school and coming in, okay, we're gonna come in Wednesday mornings at 7:30 instead of 8:30, so we can leave at 3:30 instead of staying there, which is what many of the middle schools do, for
Okay.
example. But then when you're changing your class period, a class period then goes up with the other planning period items. So that would be where the
Like, everybody.
anonymous vote situation may come in versus,
Or a load bearing versus non-load bearing would have a different opinion.
Yeah, I think that's important.
because it's actually, like I said, talking about two different aspects, I think. So if you, for example, all schools have option none, options in volume, variations in the school day. Take out the class period, because class periods are already up here in the, at the top, correct? Because of the plan period, so basically those length of class is done up in the first in section 2 with the planning period. Whereas now you're just saying that all schools have the option of utilizing the non-traditional class scheduling, like the middle school coming in at a different time. So that involves variation in
the,
however you want to say
Where-
it, but
where my head was at, and then it should, my thought was, they should definitely, it's definitely two different topics though, between that first and second sentence and the school schedule. What I also went in and talked about, the length in class periods, that had more to do with the, I got what you're saying. So you're saying, that does have more to do with the length of the periods for within the
which
program.
is sort of, I mean, that's already kind of up in section 2, right?
It's in section 2 talking about planning periods. But when it gets into, my thought was that when I'm talking about the intervention and acceleration time, being able to be flexible in the variation length of those class periods.
Because that is not a planning time for anybody?
No, it's not.
But see, that was one of the issues that
At Easter.
at some of the schools is that due to the intervention time, some people got extended planning time because they didn't have to do any intervention.
Which is being covered now because it says
All
in here that
instructional
all
staff.
instructional staff are required to help.
Yeah,
And that's why
we need it.
this was all,
No.
So I think probably what my intent was to probably the all schools being included with all the full-time middle school teachers in that paragraph, and it being a separate issue from the starting at any time.
Is this not talked about in section 1, the workday?
I have.
I guess that would probably be, that sentence would go less school schedule and more under workday.
1C.
Yes.
Yeah, that's basically it's stated in 1C.
Right.
Under 1C, it says the principal, but then for approval submitted to the superintendent. That's what it currently says.
Yeah.
Right.
So in essence, that first sentence in the section 3 I put forward is not even necessary for that area. It was the old language that was under that traditional high school schedule. It's the last sentence in that.
Are we done with the language in 1C or the new language in section 3?
well, or 1C could still stay 1C, but after it says delegated to time reporting for duty, responsibility, scheduling, starting at any time is delegated to leadership team.
Yeah, I think,
Instead of respective principals, just put in leadership team in there. At that point, and then you can cut out that first paragraph on section 3. Correct? And then instead of, it would read, the time for reporting for duty and the responsibility of scheduling starting at any times is delegated to the leadership team, but such matters must be submitted to superintendent for approval.
I think I'm okay with input from the leadership team.
Oh, like, okay, delegated to the respective principals with input from
Correct.
Yes.
the leadership team?
Okay, so where is it going? Say it again, Kathy.
Yeah, well, hopefully that won't be
Okay, so then is there?
Are we putting it on their document or our document?
Oh, I wrote it up in the, because we don't even have that, I wrote it in my
Yeah,
contract. It's not even in there.
I mean, we're taking notes on this, and it's gonna be something we have to
Okay.
bring back.
It's
Yeah.
somewhere in the
Okay.
ozone.
Yeah, we'll have to bring it back when we feel like we've got some agreement on this.
When we're
and-
finished with like everything of 15 would have to be
Well,
brought
and I
back to
think this is kind of what we're talking about today is our last
the
hanging
last.
issues on 15.
So then is there anything in section 3 that Chad's version, section 3, that we changed now because of that wording?
Yeah, I think it's striking that first sentence.
The first paragraph.
First paragraph, yeah.
Not the entire first paragraph.
Just the first sentence?
The first sentence.
Variations
And
to the
then the-
leadership team.
The second sentence would, my thought was it's something in there that, because it speaks to the remediation and differences in times there.
But to me, it's just counteracting what we just said in the plan
Well,
time.
that's right, I don't have it in front of me, but doesn't it,
I
it
mean,
sounds like we've got
because
something
We have it
in one.
in section 2.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
meant, yeah.
Let me read one more time.
Yeah.
But I don't see where that doesn't speak to planning time.
Well, no, but this is in school schedule. We are talking about section 3, that
Mhm.
first thing, right? So what we got here is the time for reporting for duty and the responsibility for scheduling, I think that's the key, starting and ending times is delegated to the respective principals with input from the leadership team, but such matters must be submitted to the superintendent for approval.
Now I follow. I got you.
Yeah, that eliminates the whole first paragraph.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could live with that if I can back up and take out the or and the paragraph above that in section 2 and make 4. Because or insinuates I don't have to give 135 hours of planning.
But that's gonna totally, there's no way to pull that off. I feel like when we get into our middle and high school or high school interventions that we've got scheduled for, like I was saying, I got examples of we're going way past the total number of hours, but it's just, not all the high schools are created the same. Not all of them need the same level of intervention. Not all of them are going to carry intervention on for the same amount of time, but as long as they're hitting that total,
That's right. For a total of at least 135 hours. But or insinuates there's a choice.
I guess I don't.
Isn't most of the remediation stuff done on a Wednesday?
No.
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 No, it's all over the place.
Tuesdays and Thursdays at East Ridge, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Or a
Varies.
separate sentence needs to be.
4 days a
But
week.
they're only
Yes.
30 minutes. They're short at that school, and she's providing longer planning periods on those days than 30 minutes. So she's not matching that up. And then what days are you guys at Lake Antelope?
Tuesday and Thursday.
Um,
Did we, I'm gonna check, did we chop our planning? I want to say we have the same exact planning period. Let me check.
you guys were the one I didn't totally just rake out the math on.
Huh? Oh, just maybe parentheses? Okay, that would work. Leave it or. Yeah,
Good,
we don't need the org.
good, let me see that, I need that. I need that position.
Comma, parentheses, total of 135 hours. Okay. All right, what if,
Where's each on your faces there?
planning period on non-early release days, comma, strike the or, parentheses, a total of at least 135 hours of planning time annually, parentheses, close parentheses. So just striking the or altogether and,
That's the same thing as having the 4. All right? It's valiant effort. I'm, what if it's separated into, because we currently have the elementaries at the
period.
45 minute, what if it at,
on non-early release days, period. And then new sentence, a total of 135, or at least 135 hours planning time annually. Make it a separate sentence.
but what I'm saying is like at East Ridge, it's on non-early release days and they only get 40 minutes of planning on those days. However, she's coming out way above her hourly total. So what have you
How is she
guaranteed?
getting above her hourly total if she's cutting time for
Because,
planning?
because she's got 45 minutes, she's got 45 minutes on the regular days and then 40 minutes on the 2 days, and then on her Wednesdays, they're providing additional planning. Even though the periods are only 36 minutes, she's providing in a longer times on those days.
If there's
Because
only-
of Wednesday,
but
because you
it's
have an
only
hour.
Either
Because you
way,
have
it's
that
only an
hour.
I think the feedback, but if it's, somehow she's got, if she goes the full hour on Wednesdays, we'd have to see how much of that time she's occupying. Because I think what she was telling me was that she winds up balancing out, and it's still higher than the, not balancing, but it's still higher than the amount. I'd have to get down in the weeds with her to speak to it. That's why I was wishing they were gonna be here, because they wind up providing more planning than the 135 hours.
It says at least. So a separate sentence wouldn't necessarily be bad.
I don't have a problem with separate sentence. I just worry about, there's days where they're gonna variate the schedule to where it won't be the 45 minutes on a non-early release.
Well, we do it for 45 minutes on Wednesday and 48 minutes Monday, Tuesday, Thursday,
Yeah.
Friday.
And now to vary, she's got 47 minutes, so that's in that hits that at least.
Yeah.
She doesn't
And
have that
in
many
the
more
bigger schools,
students
are
than
they
you
counting
guys have.
travel
Why
time?
does
Is that
she
what the
not
problem is with East Ridge?
has
Is
more
it travel
students.
time?
They have more students.
There,
Yeah.
she might have a, she might, I have to go back and look and see what her transition period is.
They have
in
7
between.
minutes between classes at East
At
Ridge.
East Ridge they do.
Well, it's a huge
Yeah,
campus.
it is.
Right, that's
And
what I'm
that's
thinking.
a- Doesn't take long to vary to get from A to B, but
Right.
there it
I
does.
think it's the.
It's huge. We have almost 1,000 students. That's why it is.
I mean, I guess,
Well, it's about 2,500 because we went down because of rezoning. Yeah, but that's still a lot.
and you're at East Ridge, correct?
No,
Oh, you're at
Lake
Lake
Mineola.
Mineola.
Yeah, but it's that long, I mean,
We have
I
5
know,
minutes.
I know.
Yeah, we do
whenever
5
you teach
minutes.
Orientation, it's like,
Yeah.
Well, how many minutes is in between? I mean, Leesburg's got a big campus and only many students, but they have a big campus too, going from
You know, I'm not,
across the
there's-
street and whatever, but I would think that they could maybe make it 6 minutes.
But most
and-
of their stuff is centralized. They don't have a lot of portables.
No, but they
Well,
go
and
across
I
the
guess-
street to Skeen,
it gets back
where
to,
Skeen was.
in the next sentence, it's saying any deviation from the requirement that provides less than 45 minutes is gonna require a majority result from non-vote instructional staff, so they'll have to be on board with it.
I And that's why I said I don't understand why we have to have the or in there, because all that's sort of covered then in the other one. In other words, if they only have 40 minutes in every day, they have to vote to say, yes, I'm willing to do this.
Okay.
Or no, I'm not willing to do this.
And I get what you're saying there, definitely. A lot of the heavy end of the discussion that we had last time was you guys were saying the hourly amount. You guys wanted the hourly amount in there. And I think y'all were pretty adamant about that, so that's why I was trying to include that. So,
Well, and that's why, I mean, when I said it, I mean, it came for a total of 135 hours annually.
It took
Okay.
us many years to get to that point too.
And then any,
Okay.
any deviation with this would require then majority vote,
Okay.
anonymous vote from all instructional staff.
okay. You know,
Which sounds like East Ridge, if that's the case, then East Ridge teachers, I'm assuming, would be fine with this, so the vote would come out as, yes, they're fine with only having the 40 minutes on whatever days.
I think probably what I would like I said, putting parentheses there, I need an understanding that our schedule is in place for 18-19, and you guys have that understanding now, then I can handle the 4. And then that way they can go back before the start of next school the following, well, that 19-20, and we make sure that we have that before, you know,
Have
by
the
the
vote.
conclusion of post-planning, there's a vote that's done there.
But this year, they would still have to have like equitable
Oh, yeah,
planning, all teachers
Oh, yeah.
involved, all that
yes,
still stays.
yeah. And what I hope to do, I want to, without my high school principals here, it was a little bit difficult, but, because I knew they'd have some additional input and provide some insight, but I'll give with them, and I want to talk to the ones that were not involved, in their initial concern, because I think our minutes are definitely fine on the 3 that we had initial concerns with, but I want to go out and check out the ones that, so I think there is an expectation that's out there that, or I know there is, that they have some intervention time. So I want to make sure that in designing that it's appropriate. So if we can rest on, I'll prepare it as 4. And we can talk about some finalized language when we come back next Monday.
Okay.
I have one question before we leave, and I was hoping, I don't want to caucus now, but I was hoping I could not embarrass myself by asking during a caucus. The original memo of understanding that says there are 6, you're guaranteed 4.
Right.
Where is that? It's not here. Is it in someplace else in the contract?
It's in the back of the contract.
It would
Yeah,
be
the
a separate
MOUs.
MOU.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said that we had incorporated the MOU.
I thought we did too, but
We did.
We did.
we did.
Oh, and then we discussed it and it went away?
And we discussed, no, we
No.
discussed it, it just wasn't put into today's
Yeah, it's just,
Okay.
typing.
it's basically on the bottom of what Kathy provided. There you go. We did some tape and take that.
That's where it is.
I feel less naive.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, and that's
Okay.
that's where we said that once we're done with all this, then hopefully Gail has it all together and
Yeah.
it'll all be done again, so that we can make sure that it's what
So
everybody has.
No,
agreed.
because again, and
Agreed
this
upon.
is just one situation at Lake Mineola. All our discussions, within that context, as long as that's there, we do it right. You know what I'm saying? And this gives us one more piece of freedom that we had discussed that has to do with testing. So as long as it's there, thank you.
So when we come back, we'll have it in a pretty package, and if there's any discussions on 404, we can wrap that up. But I just want to double check, make sure it's going to be okay moving forward.
And then the rest, 4 was duty-free lunch. Section 5 is faculty meetings.
Mm-hmm.
6 is early dismissal. 7 doesn't have a, shall not leave the place of work during working hours without permission.
Mm-hmm.
Then 8 was year-round school.
And we had talked about just removing year-round school.
Yeah.
And,
Moving it all
just so,
together.
yeah,
Just wanted
because
to make sure.
we'll have the language, on the shelf.
Archived
Yeah,
somewhere.
it's archived and on the shelf, so if we ever have to go that route again, we'll let Brenda know in plenty of time. She says that committee cannot convene.
No, no, we just have to say no. Thank you, though.
Oh. But, you know, there's so much that would go into that. We wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel, wouldn't want to consider history, but it would be a whole fail effort.
Thank you.
Okay. If I can ask a question,
Yes, sir.
on duty-free work,
Okay.
talks about elementary assisting and assuring that their students are properly in line. Is that taking away their part of their 30 minutes?
Where is that at? I'm sorry.
Section 4, duty-free lunch.
Yes, I know.
It would be the second
sentence.
sentence.
Yeah. That has to be the time it does.
Yes, it would.
Every time.
Then that's the problem.
Then that's the problem, because in other words, if their lunch is starting at 12:30,
It should have been.
okay, then their lunch, the teacher's lunch needs to start at 12:30, which means they should leave like 2 minutes before whatever
Right.
to get them to the cafeteria so that the teacher can start their own 30-minute lunch from 12:30 to 1. But the way this is stating here, as Stuart is bringing up, it may not be that case.
Yeah.
At Redway, the teacher was responsible for leading the students in, but once after they got in line, it was the monitor's,
Correct.
Yeah.
Well,
cafeteria monitor's responsibility.
But I'm hearing it is cutting into teacher's lunch. That
So-
the monitors aren't taking over, or they're expecting the teachers to make sure they get through the line, or whatever.
I don't see us getting through the line.
I see, and are properly in the lunchroom. What I would take from that is, you just don't walk to the lunchroom door
Right.
and go, I'm going to lunch with elementary kids. You need to at least walk them up and get them in the line. And once they're in the line, because the way ours is done, they go 2 different directions. And a teacher can stand at the accordion door, and just from the other side of the cafeteria, they can run around. So they're asked to escort their kids up into the front where the serving lines are, and then leave. Not stand there and wait for them if the line is backed up. And literally, I've been on monitoring, and you have to tell teachers, go. We got your kids. Because a lot of them want to
Right.
hang around. And you
But
have to say,
again,
this is your
not
lunchtime.
everyone
Go.
does that.
You know.
That's what I'm looking at.
You know, I couldn't answer. At the beginning, I know kindergarten teachers hang out and get them through the line, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
just until we get them,
Again,
you know.
They don't have lunch the first week of school.
No,
same thing with
I don't
buses
wanna
or
hear
duty
that.
or anything else the first week, even 2 weeks sometimes.
you
But
know, but,
after that, it gets,
but all hands are on deck for kindergarten, so they can go and have their lunch. I don't know.
Maybe is that just another training issue?
It would be my opinion, yes.
Say
It
what?
is clearly in contract that they are not expected to do that. So Chad, that would be a conversation with elementary principals. You gotta make sure you have plenty of help, because your teachers only have 30 minutes to have a lunch, and they need to get there, make sure their kids are in line, and go.
And tell the reps that they need to remind the teachers.
Absolutely, to go.
Well, I'm looking at language that makes this easier to read.
Well, let's be honest here, Stuart. I think you
Hey,
have.
I'm laying it out
I
on
think you
line.
have it.
How is that not?
I've got it, okay.
I mean, I think it is. That I can't ask teachers, hey, make sure you stay until your kids are all through the line. That's not what that says. That I don't have that right to do that. It's my problem if the kids aren't supervised.
Well, I guess, okay.
To me, I mean, if the first line guarantees their duty-free lunch of no less than 30 minutes, and then the second line, however, ensures that their due diligence is applied to making sure the kids are safely to the line, and I feel like we've got a safe balance there, and if somebody comes to you guys and says, hey, they're making me hang out here with these kids.
I'm getting 15 minutes
And-
lunch, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Then yeah, you've got it right here.
Okay, all right.
I mean, give us a
I've
couple
got
weeks. Give us a couple weeks, Stuart.
I'll give you a week.
Okay, thanks. Boy, he's generous.
Brenda, you get a week.
Thank you.
He drives a hard.
I'll drive
I'm
home.
saying, I'm
I'll make sure, I emphasize that before.
It's tough.
We'll
You
go
know,
through
there's
time.
no way down.
I know, but it's easy to say, teachers, make sure your kids get into line and get lunch before you have your lunch.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
And
We all
that's-
want our 30-minute lunch. Everybody does, and everybody deserves it.
And I don't care how big the school is, there are never enough monitors in the
You're right. There are.
Number.
And there's monitors, you say, that's not my job.
Right.
Can't we have teachers?
So we feel like on Article 15, we're
Are we
supposed to
close?
come back on?
Are we
Okay.
close
All right.
It's good.
You guys have some feedback on compensation?
Got a couple of questions first off.
Okay.
We do know that with the compression, and it's been pointed out, and then I'll have to go through, that we have some discrepancies. I mean, that someone could quit and come back and make her pay rate. We've shown that in several different ways. Is there anything in place to address this? And is there anything, I know you're working on budgets now. We do know that by cutting back some of our long-term debts, we theoretically have, depending who you talk to, $9 and $14 million that we're not utilizing for capital. That's why I'd like to see where the budget's at. But is there any plan to look at that discrepancy in pay issue that's been brought up and discussed?
I think we've looked at it thoroughly. We have, as far as people coming in and being able to be placed for their years of experience, one thing that offered you guys was an MOU you guys had, and we didn't get feedback on, to limit people coming from the outside, the years of experience that they will be bringing in.
Well, that's a small piece, but
So that's part of it, so you asked if anything's being addressed, so that was quite a while back. But there, as far as handling the issue as a whole, there's very little that we can do to prevent, other than limiting the amount of years of experience somebody can bring in. And in that, we didn't want to, if somebody, those options are there. I mean, essentially, if they separate, they're choosing to separate and move to the performance pay model on an annual contract. So there's some pro and con to that. So we've set up all kinds of avenues for folks to look at their salary, understand exactly what their base salary is, and their base salaries as it's been adjusted for performance pay through the years. We created a salary summary screen for folks to have a clearer understanding with all kinds of information. I mean, I've showed all that stuff to you guys. And
well,
we've
we
got,
had agreed to get that, so yeah.
Not necessarily. It was something we were working on prior to the grievance. And it's something that we want to be as clear as we can on what people's salaries are. But removing that discrepancy, it would require folks moving over to an annual contract that are not on that now. And I mean, it's all on the website. I mean, I've got all that information out there, how we would address that. So, as far as the money you were mentioning, as far as capital debt, sunsetting or being paid off, is that the money you're talking about with that?
Yeah, and I've heard,
Okay.
Diane, I've heard school board members talk anywhere from $9 to $14 million that they have.
Which hasn't been recognized yet.
Well, I'm just saying,
That
they've
has
talked
not
about it.
occurred yet, and also that's where, you know, it's gonna be pretty open when those things start to realize, then it's gonna be obvious when the budgets come out, what that capital transfer amount's gonna look like, and how much can be used for, that's capital money. And you've heard the superintendent discuss the competing interests that we have in the district, whether it's capital needs and also compensation for employees. And then we've got the overall fund balance issue. So we've got some competing needs in there. I can tell you the goal is going to be to get whatever is affordable out for compensation, because that's on the priority list.
And I know if the mill passes, the way that's written, part of that can be used for compensation too.
I think the parameters of the mill, the .75 mill that's going forward on the ballot, there's going to be some strict parameters on how that money can be used. I would say that what that does, that I would doubt that money would go directly towards compensation unless there's specific areas defined within it. But the hope is that would free other dollars possibly that we would have to dedicate in that direction, which would in turn generate more money. Less of any freed up revenue, less of it covering unmandated or mandated unfunded safety and different issues like that, and we could direct it in the direction of hopefully compensation, fund balance, and capital, depending on how much is there.
And for the sake of just clarification, I want to reiterate, that's my understanding at the present time. I was having a political, not a labor discussion with, Matthias on it, and I challenged him, and he came back and he said, no, he and the superintendent had a discussion about whether the compensation could be part of it, and he could not sell that to his constituency, so they stayed very focused on the security part. That's the language he used. So I don't think it's in the language where it could be, but indirectly where one relieves one.
But see, that's the spin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, essentially, we've got to get some relief in the mandates that have been placed on us, or any free dollars will have to go in that direction, because it's mandated things that we have to do. But you're correct in that, and it's not just, I think there's probably consensus amongst the board that we have to put this in a palatable way that the community thinks there's absolute necessity that the school system needs these dollars.
I want to go back to what Stuart's saying, and I'm bringing in another conversation here, and I don't mean it as in accuse, okay? Diane and Emily asked to have a meeting with me. That was pretty much because I challenged them on their staffing plans and stuff like that, so that became a part of the discussion. And of issue was the current morale situation, and to say it in their language, the surprise that when the original offer was made that there was such a negative backlash. And I want to talk to you separate someday about that. And I broke it down for her in Vin's language as to why that backlash may have been. And one of the things I challenged her on, and this goes back to what I think Stuart was going on it, is there was an issue as far as older teachers feeling, given history, okay? Now there's skipped steps, and then we got rid of steps. I couldn't give you that all right now, so just bear with me on that. But if she was exploring the qualitative, why the mood is so bad, why morale is so low, there was an explanation of that. She and I had a direct dynamic tension because she was quoted in an article saying that that gap, that issue, became apparent when the new regime did its analysis, which I pushed back because we've been bringing that up to Bill for 3 years.
Right.
Okay? And again, Diane was she's like, Vin, I'd never lie on purpose. That was the information I had. Very comfortable with that, given all the nature and my opinion of the previous regime. But then it came down to why are we where we are? I said, our understanding, and there's nothing more than what we get in docs and whatever in workshops, our understanding was you guys did look at the issue, okay? And it was a $9 million problem. And she cut me off, she said, it's more like a $12 million problem. I said, fine. Here's the perception out here. It's a $12 million problem, we don't have the money, that's it, next. As in, we know we had a problem, or morally speaking,
We created.
we created, a problem evolved. Since we don't have the money, there's nothing we're going to do about it. And I don't want to say that we have fanned that perception. I just have gotten nothing clear from Diane, Emily, or Bill to countermand it. It's like, and especially the experienced teachers, when they come back and they ask us and they challenge us on no money for last year, etc. That is a very sore spot. So I guess the question is whether or not incremental monies come to be. Is there an official acknowledgement that that is the situation we're in? An understanding of, sorry, I went to you, Michelle. An understanding of statute, which comes into play, right? You can't just fix it, here's the money. And then what we're doing about it.
Today, not prepared to speak to all that.
Okay.
I've done countless weeks and hours of work on that topic, and it wasn't that it was sorry, we can't do anything about it.
Right.
We explored a lot of options on how to do it. I mean, the Sentinel came in and covered it. It was put in newspapers. We created tools online to help people understand and further, get where some of the statutory directives came from. We try to push out ways to point people to those tools. I can do a full presentation on it for you guys next week if you like. But at the end of the day, you've got a current structure that's required by statute in order to provide salary increases to people, and that's the method we're trying to bring the $3 or $4 million, depending on which way it's taken, and get that to people. And we're trying to do things like, you tell me nothing's been done, but I mean, last meeting lifted the cap so that there's things that are being done.
Okay.
I gave you an MOU, correct? That limited people's experience coming in. That will prevent some of that. Never heard anything on it. So there's tons that have been done, and I can tell you, but also, where obviously there was conversation there. I know when we recognized it, and obviously there was conversation from you guys before we got here about it, but there were also ratified contracts, and there were things that went on before we got here that helped solidify those things. So, I mean, I don't know what the negotiations were like then, but these things were established long before, and I'll tell you, and like you said, even if you have the money, how easy is it to just throw money at that? It's not easy. But there's teachers all over the state that when this kicked in, and when you talk about morale, I think you're probably, when it comes to that issue, there's a statewide issue of morale in some districts that, you know, when those steps that were on the horizon for folks disappeared and things switched over. I mean, I saw it in the district I came from, I saw it in the neighboring districts and the other superintendents and consortiums that I work with and school board members across the state and teachers I know everywhere. I mean, it's obviously a point of contention. So, I mean, I can go back and I've got a huge file on it, on all the efforts that we have put in.
I don't know if it needs to be in bargaining, but I will say that if we are partners, we need to figure out how to get some communication out there.
It's been put out, though.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's on the website?
Some of it, yeah.
This is public versus private, okay? In the public sector, previous regime, please. I put it on the website, we're done. That's not how the world works in, you know, the private sector.
Would the Orlando Sentinel and the newspapers be considered?
I have to, you know what, bring that next time, because I don't remember reading anything that talked to that effect.
Lauren just did an article that the problem exists.
That's not what you're talking about, right?
That's part of it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she
I will
is.
acknowledge that I've gotten lots of information out there that the problem exists. What I didn't
Okay.
see, other than, you know, Bill, we saw it, we don't have the money, boom. Which is the perception that's out there. Let's not play games. It's the perception. So as partners, we need to do a better job of that because, and I want to end it on a positive note, the other part of that, it's opposite ends of the same candle, is the fact that you guys have, gotten rid of the cap.
That's a good first step.
It's
And acknowledging COLA.
It's part of the same thing.
Yeah.
It's people who came in with an understanding, a social contract in their mind, and then were screwed, and every day we're coming to work going, there's nothing I can do about that. There's another piece to it that probably needs to be communicated. But that's, I guess it was a very long way of saying that's where we think it is. And again, I was not looking to accuse as in nothing's done, but that's where I'm coming from right now. I don't know that. And that's where the conversation was left too. You know, it's like, maybe we got to work on that communication skill too. Because I got to imagine, to listen to what you're saying, and I trust you, that you and Guido and other people have reams of numbers someplace, and 4 different variations, and the board asked you for 40 more variations. I don't have the sense of that. Maybe I'm not supposed to, but you know what I'm saying? There's sometimes half the battle is just saying to these people, yeah, we know. And that's the situation we're in. And without saying this, you're perfectly willing to go work in Orange County, but this is the situation we're in.
And I think that, yeah, we know, I mean, that's been expressed, but like you said, if the desire is for a solution, we didn't find a feasible solution.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the issue.
Yeah.
So,
But you made a first step.
yeah, and I think that's where can I chip away at this? If I can't take a large sum of money somewhere and throw it at it and fix it, how can we chip away at this?
And I guess it's the marketing plan's forming in my head, because when we come forward and we agree on the talking points and we go to sell this, that is the first, you know, it's like acknowledged in the paper, you all know it, first step. And we're going to continue to work on it. I don't know if we'll find a solution, but you know what I'm saying? That's where I picked up where you were coming from.
Right. And you know, I think doing away with the cap was a great move. Have we looked at the person who was highly effective in 16, 17, or 17? Basically, we give them their choice of 17, 18, or 18, 19.
As finally, we got finalized.
Yeah.
It's there before we can make the comparison as far as finalizing teacher evaluations for their summative. If I can, and I can tell you this, what's likely going to occur is I don't think there'll be an issue with that. Figuring it out could be a bit of a nightmare as far as make sure you're not missing anybody.
All I do is make work for Guido.
Here's what's going to happen
like
though. I can tell you with the shift in effective to highly effective,
There's going to be
there's
more.
only going to be a few maybe that went down that
But it's still
that it reversed. So that
acknowledging that 17, 18, saying, we value your effort, we can't pay you directly now, but you can take that eval to 18, 19.
I've got Guido waiting to figure that out for me as soon as he's got the summatives, because it really, to be honest with you, it just puts goodwill out
It
there.
does.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, I don't think it's going to do a whole lot for you guys. I think
Well, that's one of the reasons I was hoping,
so I appreciate it.
I was hoping you could do the math beforehand, because I need to know when someone asks me, well, how much less of an increase am I getting because you decided to be fair? You know what I mean? But I'm hoping, like you, that it's not that huge. I mean, Guido is always very open. I'm not speaking out of turn. He brought me in on some other issues that are going to fix some things. And God knows we've been fixing that thing for years now. So that's going to make, just along my U.S. history teachers, it's going to be a big difference.
But, and so I think that is something that we're definitely open-minded to. As far as acceptance of numbers and kind of a scenario that works for you guys, probably won't have a big impact money-wise, but I will tell you this other thing I wanted to speak to, and I know y'all heard me say lift and talk about it. This is the other thing we've got to consider on lift. When we negotiate, say it stays intact, and that's the route that's decided to go. What I need you guys to keep in mind, you're highly effective folks, that percentage has shifted greatly. So that affects, it spreads the pot a little bit. We've taken on 3 new Title I schools. You've got 2 schools that are entering back into differentiated accountability. So that money, it's if we do decide to stick with it, that money that's not reoccurring momentarily is going to be spread a little thinner. And I think that's probably, if you guys, your folks understanding that getting that money to reoccurring would probably benefit them, and that the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 big dollars, it's going to be spread out anyway because there's so many more people involved in the pot for this coming year also. So, and I know that's a challenge you guys are going to face, because they've got to understand that if
Oh, I know.
it's there, that
And
that's not you
generally,
guys'
we
fault.
know that the salary proposal, and generally, the third option is with the COLA, and the redefinition of lift is probably working. We know that we used the 2.9 million that we got in compression money from the state in their FEFP and the lift money to come up with that $3 or $4 million total. But we also know during the year we have been very bare bones. I hope that we're going to continue being bare bones in this next year. So we know how you came up with that total amount. But it wasn't really anything we already have. It's all of the money that we have coming in or reassigning. Just like historically, I know they would use the insurance money that was rebated back. I think that's
Any money that's rebated back in insurance goes back into the insurance money. You can't spend it otherwise. But the money, any money that's being repurposed that currently exists is the lift money. And then the compression money is a one-time amount. So that you dedicate that to reoccurring dollars, and we won't be able to afford to uphold what's being done in the future year.
Okay.
So what the intelligent thing to do in my mind would be, okay, you dedicate that to your competing interests of the fund balance issue, because then your fund balance should be like your savings, and then you can hold your fund balance to the level that's at statutory requirement and board policy requirement. So the goal is to get back to the board policy requirement and use that money towards that. And then hopefully, like we have lived very frugally, and we have made, and that's where that money has come from, that's on top of the lift that was already dedicated there. So that, and I'm hoping that, things, we continue to, live in that manner, and we continue to make adjustments based on all stakeholder suggestions, and hopefully, because I'm happy that we have this money available. Say $4 million if lift goes away, I'm happy to cap. We've made some flexibility there and done some different things. Honestly, it's future years that scare the heck out of me, because Tallahassee, Lord, you know, you've seen it. I don't have to explain it. And I
Yeah,
know
but
you
we're gonna
guys
get-
hear
we're
from
gonna
your
get a new
higher ups
governor.
also. So,
We're working like heck to get
so
people
Decent.
changed.
Decent.
New governor's
Now-
gonna make a difference.
Yeah, I'll believe that one.
Good man.
Make a difference.
Now, going back to what you were saying, this perception and PR moves.
And it may be premature.
That's okay. But we've talked about some kind of retention supplement. And granted, we threw a dollar amount. What if we lowered that dollar amount just so our teachers who have been dedicated to us have a little something as a retention or retention bonus or supplement? Did I hit the highlight of what you were saying? Kathy?
Well, yeah,
That's a big one right there, because you were promised.
And even if it was
they threw you
a
out.
token, a smaller amount, but just something.
So,
To say thank
just
you.
to make sure clarification, I understand. So if a teacher has 20 years in, here's a one-time, or it goes into a one-time?
I'm throwing it out in discussion.
And-
Just a
and-
couple $100.
Okay,
Here.
and just acknowledging that comes out of someplace in here, right? 'Cause
Maybe.
It's not
as-
liking it.
no, I'm automatically, my mind goes to, I mean, the COLA is the small amount. That's the pot I have to work with currently. And what I need is, because I feel like I'm bringing stuff, but I need, give me some ideas. Because and something that
Do we have land we can sell?
works within, not that I know of.
Isn't it, don't we still own that
Maybe
property
Texas
by my
Steel
school?
bubble
Isn't that a
up
big
out
hunk
of
of land
it.
they were gonna build a middle
I
school?
want to answer Stuart's question, because it is a PR discussion. And
Right.
the answer is yes. I mean, if it be, and I'm speaking now as an annual contract teacher, if this, who's highly effective, if my 1,078.98 goes down to 900, but we can turn around and say, here's a few extra, and there's no more cap. That goes, you know, whatever the year thing would be. Yeah, because those are the people that have it's interesting. Those are the people that feel the most slighted,
Right.
but they're also the people that we can count on. Because they're used to being screwed. No, in all fairness, they're the ones who complain to us about the young teachers not understanding what it takes to be dedicated the way they are, and I understand a part of that, where they're coming from. So
Because they've stayed with the district, whether it's
exactly.
10 years or 20 years. I mean, they've stayed
Yeah.
with the district and they're staying.
So as somebody who's
There's
here 10
some that are
years.
still leaving now because they're frustrated and they're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Just go into another job.
Someone
But
who's
young
here-
teachers,
Someone who's here
Still
10
loyalty.
years, if the thing is, if the cutoff's 15 or 20, I'd be happy to take a lesser amount because it makes sense to me as a bargaining person. You know,
Okay.
I'm sure,
Like that, I'm
Out
just
there,
throwing that out
no.
for discussion.
but it, I'm understanding that this is,
but, and I just want to say that, and I understand, COLA's great because we finally have it. The top of the
Yay, that's
scale is
very
finally
good.
great. We
That is
finally
good.
have it because we've been pushing for that for
That's
years.
good.
The issue being the COLA again is to everybody. The COLA doesn't address any of the compression issue.
What I'm,
Just,
but what I want y'all to be cautious of,
State.
and what y'all are describing to me and what I'm hearing might make some folks feel better, but those aren't, that, when you get into a supplement or a stipend for longevity, that's not reoccurring. And that's, my goal is to get those dollars into something within law that can be considered reoccurring.
I totally am 100% with you. However, going back to the original point of the discussion, it isn't reoccurring, but it is a correction to a perceived slight.
I got
Yeah.
you.
And believe me, I'd rather have $1,000 myself.
But is it going to appear, and I know because I've been on that side of it,
Mhm.
it was like one time we got, I don't know, for all, what, it was $100 for a year, however many years. I don't know, I'm talking like 10 years ago or something. And anyway, I don't want to say it was a slap in the face,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it was not even close to what it could have been.
Mhm.
And it was almost like, I wish you wouldn't have bothered.
I,
I don't know, I always caution
no, I think,
about that.
I think that's always a
Because, you know,
risk.
these are professionals that have been in this a long
Right.
time, and you're gonna give them $200 or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Is that really is that sending the right message? Although I know that's not the intention.
Right,
You
and
were
that's why,
looking at- If you looked at everybody that was in that situation and broke out the average of what people would stand to gain if they left and come back, let's say, those folks, there's an average of about $2,700 a teacher, with some of those amounts being smaller, and then a handful of them being astronomical that held up, that would stand to gain like $8,000, 10 grand. So, but the average was sitting around 2,700. So that's what I fear also. If I can respectfully, within the law, give reoccurring dollars to teachers as opposed to one-time stipends or supplements, the better I can message that, the more it'll help you guys. But I know you guys have, in essence, you guys are representing a couple different groups from time to time, and I understand that. And I want to help you guys be able to represent your folks that feel slighted because of the changes in the laws, but also support your millennials and your young folks coming in too. And then the people in the middle, we don't want to lose them. We want to make sure everybody's getting reoccurring dollars for the work
Have
they're
any
doing.
discussion been given to the speech and language therapist with C's?
Yeah, we're working on that. That's why I said before last session, I needed time to work on language and some conversation issues, but we needed more time because we've got finances in full-on hammer-down budget mode, to be honest with you.
Say what?
They're in full-on hammer-down budget mode. They're
Now's the time to add money
they're-
to the budget.
well, I understand that, but while that, getting a whole lot of laser focus on that at the moment is a little bit difficult. But it's definitely there, it's on the radar, it's got to be considered in the budget. But how that's,
Do you need any more information?
no, I think we're good on the information. I think I've got a good understanding of it, so I'm working with finance on that. And to be honest with you, if that's something that as soon as we can come to some resolution on it. Say if you guys were okay with the contract, I'm not going to say, oh, we're not going to talk about that again until next time we open the book. That's not the case. We want to address that issue regardless. It's in contract. It was in contract currently. They'd be paid like the National Board Certified folks. Oh, that went away. We don't have to deal with them anymore. No, it's something we recognize as
Just
an
like
issue
mentor teachers,
for
just
many
like all
different
everybody
reasons
does
it needs to be
Yeah.
fixed. So the answer is yes, we're working on it.
Okay.
So
Were you gonna bring back some info on health insurance?
what I'd ask for you guys were some questions and some specifics. I've got Mr. Ritter and Marisol on standby. It depends because sometimes the questions are finance department questions and sometimes they're more health insurance risk management group size questions. I need some specifics on where we're trying to land there.
What you wanted. Isn't there, we usually have an issue with talking about it being the healthcare, and health and everything, being in the bargaining in the past. And that's why it was always brought up that health insurance should be in the contract also.
Well, it is, but not strongly. You're talking about before open enrollment. Is that what you're talking about?
That too. But I mean, we always have open enrollment before we are even done with one year, let alone doing the other. And I know there's other districts that do not do that.
Well, I think that
But
the aim is, with a new broker and with trying to shore that process up, so it is out there earlier than what it has been in the past. That at the end of the day, being self-funded especially, you know, we trend and claims are what's going to drive our increases, and it's everybody's insurance. But at the same time, people don't want to feel like it's been imposed upon them, and I get that. And I think better messaging and updating people more often on what our claims are looking like helps them to understand why the increase occurs when it occurs. I don't think it, I mean, just looking at it, you don't have to be a rocket science to see there's not going to be flat years, unless there's some huge monumental shift in the history of insurance. But I think the key is to manage our self-fund correctly and transparently, and try and create a flat, not flat as in zero, but an acceptable amount that people can learn to at least respect why they're being approached with an increase every year. So you're not getting hit on that 10 to 12 to 0% increase and going on that roller coaster. So that's not fair to anybody. It's not a responsible way to manage your insurance.
Jack, can I track you all the way back? On the options that are on the table, the last one, the option 1, option 2, are you still asking us for direction?
Yes.
Stuart, can I ask for a call?
Yes.
And when you say direction, I'll say really on lift, because if not, what I feel like I'm inclined to do is come back as soon as Geo finishes the finalized valuations and we start negotiating lift MOUs. So
That's what I think.
Okay.
That's why I think I picked it up.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The same house,
Yeah.
then why didn't our policy
Not
say that?
necessarily what they
It
actually
does.
do.
We
That's
measure
what
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you like live together, you'd be fine.
Yeah.
It's your fault for not living in
Yeah, it's in there because that when we went back and looked at that too, we were like,
Okay.
So do you only live together? How many nights a week is that?
with me, I need some help.
Thanks, but my husband hates it when I date outside the marriage.
She's always, yeah.
But why wouldn't somebody point that out?
Are you ready? I didn't even notice it.
No, I thought this was 320.
I didn't think it'd be their business if you were living there or not. Yeah, but I'm here in my personal one.
You're on the record, by the way. Okay, thank you for the time. And I think that the question is how you need some direction on the lift.
yes, sir.
And we're willing to, and I like the option, I think it's option 2, with the COLA and the doing away with caps, utilizing the lower amounts to live.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we still have to have it in there by state law, but we don't need the amounts that we had. So, and I think in your option, you delineated.
So you're saying your Title I and those type?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would still like to see lift at some point, that committee, so we're looking at the true as Ventop's bench strength program, rather than just a pat on the head and breadcrumb approach. And I would like to see it as a true bench strength program, but I think that's something the team committee should be working on. But as far as using the dollar amount, and so since we're at the beginning of the year and we're going to need to but yeah, to trade that for the COLA, and so we just need numbers and
Okay.
see who falls where.
Okay. All right.
Does that give you the direction?
That is extremely helpful, and we'll take that. You know, with a lot of the numbers you see in there as far as numbers of who fell where is projected.
Right.
So we'll get solid,
Still getting
yeah, we'll have it,
solved and stuff.
we'll knock it concrete there. Yeah, there are some things, obviously, that there's some of the numbers that'll still be a little bit fluid as far as number of teachers because,
We're adding Title I
So,
schools,
yeah.
so.
folks that might be eligible, that perhaps will be rehired prior to September, they can still be eligible. So some of those numbers of people might move a little bit, but we'll get solid concrete on Monday.
Okay.
We'll have it there, that'll help.
So when's our next meeting?
Monday.
Monday again?
Yes, sir.
8 o'clock.
At 8
8
o'clock?
o'clock here.
Yes.
Oh, no. Who agreed to that?
Bright and early.
You did.
I did.
Yes.
Y'all can come spend the night at my house.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's here.
There's enough rumors, Terry.
Maybe just as a thought for the next time, I would love to see us as a committee have some way to jointly get out this information. I mean, yes, I know we're going to have rep
Right.
meetings and all of that stuff, but we have not been as good as we said we were going to be when we started at doing joint
Right.
information. It absolutely amazes me the number of teachers that I've run into over the summer that have said, oh, how's bargaining going? You do realize you can go online and watch it. No, I didn't know that. Really? Just because I think there are things that we could get out to people. We're kind of facing the same problems you are as
Yeah.
far as we have teachers that when Stuart did a survey of what would you be in favor of, we're coming back going, no, we don't want anything.
If you're not giving me a 17, 18 raise, I'm voting no.
Yeah,
And that was the majority.
yes. And I don't want to see that happen. I'm sorry,
No,
we've worked
we
too
worked
hard.
and we
This
need
has
it.
been a long
No.
time.
Yes, to hammer through this, and I think we need to jointly somehow set the stage of, we understand these are the problems. We recognize this. This is our first step
Put a little
in moving in
blurb on
another
the
direction.
website page that says, did you know, bargaining sessions can now be viewed online.
It's there.
It's on the front.
It's on the front,
Right on
yeah.
the front.
I mean, it's
Got it
on
on
the
the
front.
scroll.
Big billboard on the front.
But
But I get what you're saying.
I don't,
But there could even be a group go
If
to
you don't know,
like the
look for
television, you know how we have the lake where they just go there and do a little, meeting, like Steve Ritchie used to do.
But sometimes I just don't read the whole thing. They're looking for a specific thing and they skip over everything.
or
What?
even
But
Facebook
if the press were
notices
there, then
that tell
yeah,
people, want to
it's
see
all-
bargaining, go.
We get, I know we've
I
been,
wasn't,
trying to put stuff out on Twitter and trying to put stuff out on Facebook. So if we can get some join into that, I'll have Sherry, kind of help me, be part of that. And we'll dedicate some time to how do we message that out. But I agree, I mean, it's been painstaking, and long, but we made some.
Yeah, but we need to put that united front face on it for everyone.
And I think we all have a vested interest in seeing better morale in this
Yeah.
town.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
And it's better already, so.
We're gonna get there, and we'll get there together.
That teamwork thing just really, you feel like you're on a team.
Exactly.
That's why I'm so about the, people coming together and collaborate. It's not just about the planning, it's all about the relationships you build with that. And so, because when somebody's down a little bit or has something to do, your teammates help them out. And that's how it should be. And I think Carnegie and Dr. Weiskopf have done a really good job of listening. They did a lot of listening to know what the concerns are, but not all of it's going to be solved overnight.
Okay, so we're
Yep.
scheduled for next Monday. Are we good for this evening? And if you guys, any ideas, questions, concerns through the week between now and then,
Yes, I don't.
shoot them to me and
I don't have insurance.
I can bring it.
It's on the external.
It's on the
Oh, you
external.
can't get to the
I can't get to the external either, here.
Fine.
I don't have credentials.
Not those credentials.
You've got some credentials, too.
So are we good?
We're good.
Monday. Or see some of you in a few hours.